Welcome everybody, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are joining us today. I don't think I need to go too much more into an introduction to myself because I think James has already given me a good enough one. So I think we're probably going to jump straight into the webinar. And as you mentioned, today's webinar is on organising and collaborating with OneNote 2016. So I have a few slides at the beginning which I'm just going to run through. And as always with our webinars, they are being recorded. So because I am going to go through a lot of things today, then if you do find that you need to go back at the end, then you can always refer to the recording in order to do that. But I will go as slow as possible just in case any of you are writing notes. So as I said, we'll just skip over the About section. Now, we're going to be focusing on OneNote today, and OneNote is kind of a strange application. The reason why I say it's strange is because it's been around for so many years, but people don't really realize how long it's actually been around for. So I know that from my perspective, I've only really been training OneNote for probably the last couple of years. It just really seems that over, as I said, the last couple of years, that people are really kind of recognizing the usefulness of OneNote. Now, there are lots of applications out there and available at the moment, such as Evernote, which you might have used before for taking notes, but it is, if you do use Microsoft products on a daily basis, so if you spend a lot of time in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it is nice to kind of just complete the set and use OneNote for your note taking as well. And you'll see as we go through, as they all do, the Microsoft applications all interact together, so it's a good reason for using OneNote. Now, for those of you on the call today, now I don't know what your skill level is when it comes to OneNote. I'm sure we've probably got a mixed bag, so we've probably got some people who have never used OneNote before, and this is the first time that you're really seeing it. And we might have some people who've maybe played around with it a little bit, and we might have some people on today who are fairly advanced. And the reason why that we wanted to do a OneNote course today is because it's very exciting. Last week we actually launched our first OneNote course, and so we thought it'd be nice to do a webinar just to kind of back that up a little bit. So this is kind of like an introduction to OneNote session.
Yeah, and also since everybody here is a member, you will be able to find that in your dashboard when you log in. So if you're interested in taking a look at that OneNote course, you do have access to it already.
Lovely, thank you for adding that in there, James. Okay, so let's start out by just discussing what exactly is OneNote. So it is essentially a digital notebook. So the way that I like to think about it is if you imagine a paper notebook, which everybody has on their desk, which you can write notes in, it's a digital version of that, but it has a lot more functionality. It's also available in the cloud, so it's a cloud-based tool, so it is available as part of Office 365. So you'll see as we start to go through, you can save your notebooks that you create into the cloud, so that might be something like OneDrive or SharePoint, and it just ensures that any information that you add will be updated wherever you are. So you might be accessing your notebook on a laptop in the office, you might be at home trying to access it, but everything will synchronize together if you've got it saved into the cloud. So it is a really good cloud-based tool that essentially follows you around. It also enables you to collaborate with others, so this is a really good way, and I've actually seen this in practice at other places that I've worked, so it's a really good way for teams to collaborate together. So for example, if you work in a small team or even a large team, you might be working on a project and you can create a team notebook for that specific project which you all have access to, and you can all add notes into the notebook at the same time. There's lots of collaboration features built into OneNote which we'll take a look at as well. And as I mentioned, it also integrates with the other Microsoft applications. So you'll see that there's functionality that's contained within Outlook and Excel and PowerPoint and Word, which all integrates across with OneNote, which is why, or one of the main reasons why I think it's quite a good idea that if you do use Microsoft products heavily, that you take the time to learn OneNote and use that as opposed to maybe other applications which you might have for note-taking on your PC, that integration capability. You can do a lot more with OneNote. So you can take notes and you can gather information from a number of different sources very easily, and we're going to be taking a look at some of the tools and techniques that you can use to pull all of that information together. And you can create multiple notebooks. Now this is what I like, because I like the fact that I don't just have to use OneNote at work. I use it just as much at home as I do at work. So I have notebooks which are very much work-based, but I also have notebooks for personal use as well. So I'm somebody I love to travel. So one of those people, I never have any holiday or vacation time, if you're joining us from America, left at the end of the year. I take a lot of holidays during the year, and I use my notebook in order to plan those holidays, and I just find it works really well when you're just trying to pull together lots of information in one place. You can add handwriting, you can add audio, and you can also add video files into your OneNote notebook. And you'll see as we go through, OneNote, whilst it's available on all devices, it works particularly well if you're using a tablet device or maybe something like a Surface Pro that comes with a stylus pen, because you'll see the handwriting part of OneNote is actually really, really good. So if you're somebody who likes to maybe take notes in a meeting using your stylus pen, you can see that you can do that really nicely in OneNote and then convert all of your handwritten notes into text very simply if you want to. So that's another nice little feature. And then finally, there's lots of other functions, but we can also flag notes for various different reasons. So we can flag notes as tasks, which will then integrate with Outlook if you use Outlook as your email. And we can also create things like tags as well, which makes finding specific notes a lot easier. So we're going to try and touch on as many of these things as we can in the time that we have allocated today. Lovely. So as I said, you can access it anywhere, any time. Now the version that we're going to be looking at today is OneNote 2016, and we're going to be taking a look at the desktop version. However, it is available through Office 365, so if any of you have access to the Office 365 portal, which if you should do if you have access to Office 365, you can log into your account and you can access OneNote through your account, which really means that it kind of follows you around. I could be sitting on a beach in the Bahamas. I wish I was sitting on a beach in the Bahamas with my laptop. As long as I've got Wi-Fi, I can log into that portal and I can open up OneNote and I have access to my notes, and they should all be up to date because everything synchronizes as long as I've saved my notebook into the cloud, so OneDrive or SharePoint. And that's just a screenshot just to show you the web version. We're not going to look at this version today, as I said, we're going to look at the desktop version, but if I was to log into my Office 365 portal and open OneNote, that's what it looks like. So it looks a little bit different, so don't be surprised if you see it, but you can access all of your information in exactly the same way. Fabulous. So let's minimize that and let's jump straight into OneNote. So I'm just going to open it up. Now, currently I don't have any notebooks open, and we're just going to take a quick look at the user interface before we get into some of the functionality. So if you're familiar with Microsoft products, and this is going to look very familiar to you, so we have that same structure at the top, File, Home, Insert, Drawer, the ribbons with our commands. Underneath that, we have our quick access toolbar, which is located just here, which we're going to add some things onto shortly. And then if you cast your eyes over to the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that there is a search box. So that's for searching for notes. Again, we're going to go through that. And then currently in the main section of our screen, we don't have anything. And it says you don't have any open notebooks. And that's because I've pretty much closed everything before we started the session today. Now, before we get into opening notebooks, I just want to jump you across to the File tab. So again, if you're familiar with Microsoft applications, you'll know that the File tab is slightly different to the other ribbons. It takes us into that backstage area, and that's where we have all of our notebook administration tools. So we'll find things like new, open, print, save, all of those things that you do on a regular basis. And this is where I can come. Obviously you can see here straight away that I can create new notebooks from here, and I can access all of my settings as well. So we're going to come into here in a moment when we create our first notebook. I'm going to click on the arrow at the top, which will take me back to the main screen. Now, something else which I would highly advise that you do, and again this applies to all Microsoft applications, not just OneNote, but I just like to reiterate it so that you do this, because I think it's so useful, and you might have already done it in some of your other applications, and that is just making sure that you know how to add things to this quick access toolbar, and you're probably going to want to have a play around with OneNote before you do that, so you know which commands you use all the time. And if you're not familiar with the quick access toolbar, it's just this little area just here where we currently have two little icons which are grayed out, a back and an undo and a redo button. You can add as many commands as you like to your quick access toolbar. It just means that you're not searching around through the ribbons looking for commands that you use frequently. You can add them onto here so that they're easy for you to access. So again, if you want to customize that, and I would highly recommend that you do, just click your drop down arrow and go down to more commands, and it will take you directly into the options area, and you'll see that it will jump you straight to the quick access toolbar section, and you can scroll through the list and you can add whichever commands you want over into your quick access toolbar. I've got mine just showing popular commands, but if you want a full list of every single command available, you can select all commands and then go through, and I'm just going to add, let's add cut. So I'm going to select cut, click on the add button, and you'll see that now appears on the right hand side. And when I click on OK, that now appears on my quick access toolbar just here. They're currently all showing, or most of the buttons are showing as deactivated. They're grayed out, and that is simply because I don't have a notebook open currently. As soon as we open a notebook, they will all become colourful again, and we'll be able to do some things. So now that's out the way, let's start taking a look at how we open and create new notebooks. Now, the thing that you need to remember with OneNote is that there is no save button, and this confuses people first of all. They're constantly looking around like, where do I save? Where do I save? You won't find it anywhere. If you click on the File tab, you'll see that there is no save button in here, and that is because with OneNote, your notes are automatically saved for you. You don't need to keep saving. The only time that you save the file is at the beginning. So if I'm creating a new notebook, again, we're going to do that shortly so you can see this process, but when I create a new notebook, it's going to ask me where I would like to store that notebook essentially. So I might select on my desktop. If I want to save it locally, I might put it in my documents, or as we recommend, you might save it into cloud storage, so OneDrive, SharePoint, something along those lines. Once you've stored it there, you no longer need to worry about saving, which is great because I'm one of those people who always forgets to save. So it will remember everything that you do, and it's constantly updating and saving. So just something to point out there. All right, let's open, first of all, a notebook that I've created previously. So we're going to go to the File tab, and we're going to go down to Open. And you'll get various different options up here. So you can see at the top here it says Open from OneDrive. So these are notebooks that I've got saved into OneDrive. And if I scroll down, I have a whole host of different locations that I can choose. So it really depends on where I've saved my notebook as to which one of these I choose. So I have a couple of OneDrive accounts. You can see I've got one for work and one for personal. I also have a SharePoint site set up there. And if I'd chosen to save my notebook locally, I could choose this PC, or if I just want to have a browse around, I can click on Browse, and that will take me to my local drives as well. You'll see in the right-hand side, you'll also see that your recent notebooks that you've had open, so I can see all the different things that I've had open today. It looks like I've been a very busy girl opening and closing all of these different OneNote notebooks. I'm not sure if that's actually accurate. I don't actually remember doing that. Maybe I was subconsciously doing it. I don't know. I think I've closed a lot of these. So I'm just going to select, let's open this OneNote practice notebook. So I'm just going to double click. And this is quite a large notebook, so sometimes it does take a few seconds for all of the information to pull through, and it will probably be even slower as we're on WebEx and across the network, but there we go. So it's still loading. Here it comes. I can see the different colors are now changing. So this is a notebook that I created actually for our OneNote course, which we've just made live online. So this is the practice exercise essentially. So at the end of each section of our course, you get the chance to practice the skills that you've learned, and this is kind of what I set up in order for people to be able to do that. And you'll see now that I've got a notebook open, all of my buttons are now active on the ribbon. Now, one thing you need to understand about OneNote is the way that it's structured, and it's really not dissimilar to a paper notebook. So I like to have the image of a paper notebook in my mind when I'm taking a look at the structure of my digital notebook. So what you have at the top level is your notebook name, and you can see that listed here. It says OneNote Practice, This little area just here is essentially your notebook list. That is the technical name for it. So any notebooks that you open will appear in this list, and you can pretty much kind of toggle between them. So you can have 10, 20, however many notebooks you want open at the same time, and they will all stay in this list until you right-click and close the notebook. So even if I was to come out of OneNote and come back to this tomorrow, when I opened OneNote, they would still be in the list because they don't close until you actually physically close them through the menu. So this is the top level, your OneNote notebook. Now each notebook that you create is divided into a number of sections. So again, think of this like if you've got a paper notebook, you might have section dividers in that notebook, those nice colourful section dividers. That's kind of what you have recreated at the top of the screen here. We have the different sections. And then within each section, you then have your pages. And if you cast your eyes over to the right-hand side of the screen, this is where you'll see all of the different pages. So I can click, and these are all the different pages contained within that section. And it's on these pages where you start to add your notes. So it's important to recognize that structure: notebook, section, page. You can also have sub-pages, which I don't have any sub-pages in this particular workbook, but notebook. I keep saying workbook because I've just been working on Excel, I'm sorry, notebook. We are going to create some sub-pages when we create our own notebook, and you'll see how all of that works. But that is kind of the basic structure that you have. Now, as I mentioned, it's very simple to close your notebooks, and we do recommend that you do that once you finish looking at your notebook. If we click the little drop down just here and just right-click on our notebook, there's various different options that we have in here, but one of them is properties. So let's jump across to properties. And you'll see in here, this is where you can change things like the display name. So if you decide that you want to change the name of your notebook, then you can come in here and change the display name. Now, it's worth noting that this doesn't actually change the name of the file. It will change the name that you physically see in the notebook list, but the file, because these are all essentially files wherever they're stored, so OneNote or local or wherever it is that you've stored, won't actually change in the background, which is a little bit confusing. So if I go and change the display name, I always like to go in and change the file name as well, just so everything matches up. And again, I'm going to show you how you can do that. You can also change things like the color of the notebook, and you can change the location from here as well. So those are your notebook properties, and that's available just through that right-click menu. You can also find it through, if you click on File, in the Info area. So you'll see any I would say workbooks again, notebooks that you have open will appear in here, and you can access those properties through there as well. As always with Microsoft, there's always about 4 or 5 different ways that you can do exactly the same thing. So really it's whatever works for you. All right, so now we've taken a look at an open notebook. Let's create a new notebook and see how we can save that. And we're going to create 2 notebooks. We're going to save one into the cloud, so one into OneDrive, and we're going to save one locally, just so you can see the difference, because they do behave in slightly different ways. Now I'm going to leave my OneNote practice notebook open, and I'm going to go to File and select New. So when you're creating a new notebook from scratch, as I said, you will have a list up here of the locations that are available for you to save your notebook into. So I could choose to save mine into either one of my OneDrive, into SharePoint, or I can browse and save locally. So for this one, I'm going to put it in my personal OneDrive, and I'm going to give my notebook a name. And just to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm going to do this on travel, as I mentioned it at the start. So I'm going to call my notebook Travel, and I'm going to click Create Notebook. Now, if you save into the cloud, as I'm doing here, I'm saving into OneDrive, you will be prompted with this when you try and create your notebook, and it will say your notebook has been created. Would you like to share it with other people? And this is another important point to note. If you intend to share your notebook with team members or colleagues, if you think that is something that you might want to do, then you can choose to share it as you create the notebook. So it might be that all of your team have been to a meeting, and you've decided that that's what you're going to do. You're going to have a group notebook for the project that you're working on. You go back to your desk, you set up the notebook. You might want to invite people straight away to that notebook. Or it might be that you don't necessarily want to invite them right now. You might want to maybe add some things into the notebook first and then share it at a later time. So you don't have to share it at this stage. If you don't, click Not Now, which I'm going to click. And you can see now I have my notebook open. So it's actually, it's because I called this travel plans in the back end, and you'll see, let me come out of here. This is because it's changed its name because I used this in my example earlier, so I'm going to call my notebook something different just so it's less confusing for you. Just bear with me. Right, let's go back to new, and I'm just going to call it something different. So let's call it holidays. Although I think I might have a notebook called that already as well. Let's call it holidays 2, just to be on the safe side. I don't want to confuse you all. All right, so I'm going to click Not Now. All right, so we've got this one called Holidays 2. So you can see now when I click the drop down, I have 2 notebooks open. So it's very easy to toggle between any open notebooks that you have. Now before we do anything with this notebook, I'm going to create another one immediately. And this time I'm going to save it locally. So we're going to go back to File. And I'm going to go to New. But this time, instead of saving into OneDrive, I'm going to click on Browse, and I'm going to choose a local location in order to save it. So I'm going to put this one on my desktop, and we're going to call this one Project Tornado. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? There we go. Now, did you notice the difference there? When I created Project Tornado, I didn't get that prompt asking me if I wanted to share, and that is again another really important point. You must save your notebook into a shared location, be it a network drive or OneDrive, if you want to share with other people. You can't share a notebook which is stored locally. Okay, so that's a really important point to note, and that's why I didn't get prompted, because this one is saved to my local desktop. Now, how can I tell? Now, if I was to start working in Holidays 2, and I'm just going to type in some basic things in here, you'll see now, can you see that little icon that's just appeared over the top of Holidays 2? That is the synchronization icon. Now, that won't appear when I start typing in Project Tornado, and again, it's because they're stored in different locations. When you save into the cloud, it synchronizes constantly, and that's what that icon is representing. It's updating across all of your devices wherever you have OneNote installed. You don't see that because it's stored locally for Project Tornado. Okay, so that's the difference between the two there. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. I'm just going to delete that note out of there. So let's start adding some notes in. So I'm going to set up the structure for my Holidays 2 notebook, and I'm going to add in some new sections. So the first section's already been created, and if I right-click on that section, as you would expect in Microsoft, you get a whole host of different options related to that particular section. Now I'm going to rename this section, so I'm going to select Rename. You could also double-click, and I'm going to call this section January, and I'm going to hit Enter in order to set that. To add another section, fairly obvious, we can click on the little plus sign. As we hover over, it says Create a new section, and I'm going to call this one February, and we're just going to do the first 4 months of the year in the same way. Would help if I could spell. There we go. I still can't spell. Look at that. Let's go back. I'm a perfectionist. I can't leave it like that. There we go. And we can right-click and do the final section. So we'll just do the first 4 months of the year. So now I have my different sections there, and what I need to do now is add some pages which are going to contain my notes and my content, which we're then going to start to bring in from all different areas. Now, because this is about my holidays, I'm going to type in some of my holiday destinations this year. So you're going to get a trip around my itinerary. So the first one is Sri Lanka. And you can see when I type the title, if you look over in the right-hand side, that's basically given the page a title. The first page is automatically there for you. If you want to add any subsequent pages, you'll need to click on the Add Page option at the top. So when I click Add Page, you'll see it then says Untitled, and I just go in and I can add in some more options just here. So the second one is Myanmar, and then I could add another page in here if I wanted to, which we're going to call Slovenia. And I can go through and I can do the same thing in all the other pages if I want to. I'm not going to do that. We're just going to keep it to these three at the moment. So once you have your pages, you can then start adding notes in. Now what you also might want to do is create sub-pages. So I mentioned this at the start, but we didn't actually demonstrate it. Now sub-pages, you can have two levels of sub-pages, and they work in basically the same way as what we've just done. So if I wanted to maybe divide down the Sri Lanka page into maybe 3 areas within Sri Lanka that I'm going to, I very simply click on the Add Page button again, and we're going to type in Colombo. And we'll add 3 of these. So I'm going to add another page and call it Negombo. I'm sure I'm probably spelling these wrong. I do apologize. Let's do another one. Candy. I'm pretty sure I've got that one right. There we go. And I'm going to make these 3 sub-pages of my Sri Lanka page. So all you need to do is move them up underneath Sri Lanka first of all. So I can just click on the page and I can drag, and you can see I've got that little arrow showing me where it's going to go. And when I let go, it moves it up. And the same with that one. I could do these all at the same time as well, just by holding down my control key to select them all. I'm just going to do them individually. And then so that you can see that they are actually sub-pages of this page, because at the moment they just look like regular pages, you can just indent them, again, by clicking on the page and just dragging to the right, and you'll see it indents. And I can do the same for all of them. So now it's very easy to tell our pages from our sub-pages, and you can indent one more level. I can drag to the right again. That's it. You can't drag any more, so you have 2 levels of sub-pages that you can have. So I'm just going to drag that one back. So that's kind of how you start to create your structure. One thing that I haven't mentioned that you can also do with regards to the structure is you can create section groups. So you might want to have a group of sections, which just allows you to add more and more information in. If you wanted to create a section group, if you just right-click your mouse on any of the section tabs, you'll see you have the option New Section Group. So I might want to have a section group called Asia, for example. And that just lists just there, and you can see that it does look very different to our other sections, and when you click on it, it takes you into a whole new kind of section. You can then go through and start adding sections within your section groups. Then I might want to break it down by country or whatever it might be. So sorry, I'm going to rename that to Thailand, like so, and then I can start naming my pages again. You can tell I don't normally type on this keyboard. I'm awful at typing on this keyboard. So it just gives you more scope for adding different sections and just really organizing your pages and your data. If you want to get back to your original sections, if you click on the little arrow, that will take you back to where we came from. So you can have as many of those as you like. So it's a good idea to set up that structure before you start adding in your notes. All right, let's start adding in some content onto our pages. Now, we're going to be working quite a lot on the home ribbon and also the insert ribbon in this section. You'll see there's a whole heap of things that you can insert into your pages to really make them useful, interesting, and productive. Now, a question I get asked all the time, and it's probably the first question I get asked when people are like, what's OneNote? I explain it to them, and they're like, well, how's that different from Word? And I can see that you might think it might be fairly similar. I guess one of the things that makes it different from Word is with Word, when you start typing in a Word document, you're very much restricted to typing from the margin. So you'll always go back to that margin to start typing a sentence, unless you start adding things in like text boxes and things like that. OneNote is a little bit more flexible and free-flowing. It has more of a scrapbook quality to it than Word does. So I can click anywhere on my page, start typing. I'll just type in some rubbish first of all, and it will appear in its own little floating, almost like a text box, and I can drag that round. We actually call it a container in OneNote. It would be more like a text box in something like Word. And I can drag and drop that wherever I like, which gives it a lot more flexibility when it comes to where you're actually typing your text. And you can move the objects around, no matter what it is, text, pictures, screenshots, around until your heart's content. So I'm just going to delete this. I'm just going to highlight the container and click on delete. And I am going to click over at the margin and we're going to start typing in some text. And in fact, let's do it on the Sri Lanka page. And I'm going to type in things to do in Sri Lanka. Now, when it comes to formatting your notes in OneNote, you'll find a lot of the formatting options on the home ribbon. Now, you're not going to find as many formatting options in OneNote as you do in something like Word. You do have a limited amount. But you have most of the things that you're likely going to want to use. So you can see here I can highlight my text, I can make it bold, italic, underline, all of the usual things you would expect to find in this little basic text group at the top. I also have access to some inbuilt styles as well, and again, if you're somebody who works heavily in Word, you're probably used to the concept of styles. They just help you to format your document or your spreadsheet, or in this case your notebook, a lot quicker by just being able to apply pre-formatted styles. Styles are good because they help you maintain consistency in your documents as well, so you're not constantly switching around font sizes and things like that. So I might want to use heading 1 for this, just to make that text style and make it a little bit bigger. What I'm then going to do is if I press enter underneath, I'm going to add some bullet points here. Now you can probably see, I'm not going to go too much into this because I think we're all fairly familiar with how you format font. I could click on the bullet points icon on the, bullet points command on the home ribbon, but there is a little quick keyboard shortcut for bullet points as well. And I'm just wondering, does anybody know, out of interest, I'm not sure, I think this might only be available in OneNote, so this is really going to test anybody's OneNote knowledge. If you want to type it into the chat window, does anybody know the shortcut key for creating a bullet point in OneNote? If you want to type it into the chat window if you know. Control and full stop. That might be one I don't know. I'm not going to say you're wrong until I've tested it because that's not the one I know, but it might be. Let's see. Control full stop. Yes, very good. I have learned something today. I love it when that happens. If I can also add to that, there you can do asterisks and just hit the space bar as well. So that will allow you to add automatic bullet points as well. So I'm going to add into here just some basic text. So things that we might want to do in Sri Lanka. So we might want to go to Yala National Park. We might want to go on safari. We might want to go to the tea plantations, so on and so forth. And again, I can go in and I could apply styles to this if I wanted to. I might want to make them heading 2. Okay, so your formatting options are all there as you would expect them to be. Lovely. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start adding more and more elements into our notebook. So we're going to jump across to the insert ribbon. And what you'll find on the insert ribbon is a lot of different options to what you have in, say, something like Word. So we have all the usual things there. So at the start of the ribbon we have our table option. Now I'm just very quickly going to enter a quick table by dragging my mouse over the grid. Hopefully that doesn't appear too pale because I know sometimes this is quite hard to pick up on a webinar. Hopefully you can all see the little table it's put in. It's in its container, so I can drag it around wherever I want, and I can click in and I can add whatever text I like. So we're just going to add a little bit of text in here. So maybe this is just planning out my itinerary. Yala National Park. City tours. These might be things that we're doing while we're there. Tea plantations tour, so on and so forth. And I can then drag that underneath my text. Now you can resize all of these things as well. So if I grab the end there and drag the center point of that table, I can drag that out. Now when I'm clicked in the table, and this is a concept you're probably familiar with from Word, you get your table tools contextual ribbon appear at the top. So if you glance your eyes up to where we have our ribbons, you'll see we have table tools appear, and when we click on layout, we have all of the options available to us for manipulating and formatting that table. And again, not quite as many options that you'd have in those other applications, but we do have basic things like we might want to add some shading to make it a little bit more interesting. I might want to make these bold, so I'm just going to do Control B. We can select, we can delete columns and rows, we can insert above, left, right, so on and so forth. Something that we can do that's quite nice is we can convert any tables into Excel spreadsheets directly from here as well. And I would recommend you do that. If you have tables that you think you're going to want to edit a lot, it's quite nice to be able to have the functionality of Excel. So maybe not necessarily so much in this example, but maybe if you have data in a work notebook, that maybe you want to use Excel functionality. So maybe there's formulas that you want to use or things like that. Formulas aren't available in OneNote, but you could convert it to an Excel spreadsheet, and then that opens up all of the Excel functionality to that table, and it will automatically update. So let's see how that works. So I'm going to click in my table, and I'm going to click Convert to Excel Spreadsheet. And again, it just takes a couple of seconds. And there we go. So it will create a link to the Excel spreadsheet, which you can double click on and open. And if I want to make any changes or edits, I can now click on the Edit button. And it will actually open it in Excel. So now that opens up the full functionality of Excel. So I could have formulas, I can conditional formatting, go for your life. Whatever you want to do in Excel, you can do it. It might just be that I want to make a quick change, so maybe I just want to change this to Safari at Yalla instead. And then when I click on the Save button in Excel, that will automatically update that information in OneNote. So you can see there now it's changed to Safari at Yalla. So that's a really nice way of how the apps integrate together and how you can use them together. Fabulous. All right, so let's go back to our insert ribbon. So we've taken a look at tables. We've seen how we insert the spreadsheet. We can also do things like insert files and printouts. Now, there is a difference between these two. So I have an itinerary in a nice Word document, and maybe I want to add that into my sorry, I keep saying spreadsheet or workbook, into my notebook as well. So I can go in and I can add the file attachment simply by clicking on the file attachment button. That's going to take me to my local drives, and I have on my desktop my Sri Lanka itinerary. So this might be a PowerPoint presentation, Word document, anything you can use, and we can click on Insert, and it will ask me, do you want to attach as a file or do you want to attach as a printout? Now we're going to do it as a file first of all, so I'm going to click, and it just gives me that nice little neat icon which I can drag around and I can add underneath there. So it's just a nice way again of gathering my information all together in one place. Now you might be thinking, what's the difference between inserting a file attachment and inserting a printout? And I'm going to switch across to a different page just so that you can see that we've got a little bit more space. If I want to insert that same document as a printout, let's see what it does. So I'm going to click on File Printout. I'm going to go back to my desktop. I'm going to scroll down and select the same document and click on Insert. And what it does is it actually puts a printout of the actual document. So you can see the entire document in your notes as opposed to it just being a link or an icon which you then double click on and it will open independently in Word. It will also provide you with the link at the top here to the Word document. So you can see it, but you can also, if you want to go in and use the functionality of Word, you can double click to open it, and as we saw in the example with Excel, any changes you make in Word will update across. Okay, so again, a really nice little functionality that you can add in there. Now I'm going to go on to the Ngombo page, and we're going to start adding in some pictures. Let's make this a little bit more interesting, get ourselves excited for our trip to Ngombo. You'll see you have a little images group, and we have three icons. We have screen clipping, pictures, and online pictures. Now, I'm not going to run through pictures because I think we're all fairly familiar with the concept of adding a photo into a Word document or into Excel. We click on pictures, we browse for it, we add it in. Online pictures is a little newer to the Microsoft applications. I think it was introduced in the 2013 release. So let's go to online pictures, and I'm going to add in pictures of Ngombo. So this is where I can do a direct search of the internet without leaving OneNote, and it will do a Bing image search. So I'm going to type in Ngombo and press enter. This is where we find out if I've spelt it correctly. Oh, it looks like I have. Very good. So I can then scroll down, choose whichever picture I want to add, and I'm going to choose this one, and I'm going to click on insert. And it adds that picture very nicely into your document. You can then click on it and you have all the usual utilities. You can resize it, you can drag it around to move it around the screen. You can even do things like you can rotate it, various different things like that. Again, you don't have as many picture formatting options as you might do in something like Word, so I don't have the ability to add a border or things like that around my picture. It's just the functionality isn't there in OneNote, but I can add as many pictures as I like. Just going to resize that ever so slightly. Lovely. Now, another way that I might want to add an image is using the screen clipping utility. And again, this might be something that you've used in the other applications. It was again added as a function in the release of 2013, I believe. And screen clipping is very similar to the print screen option. So if you've ever taken a screenshot before, then screen clipping is very similar, except you get to control what you're screenshotting. So the print screen will just take a print of the entire screen that you currently have up, whereas screen clipping will allow you to control that. So maybe I am, let's go across to Google, and I'm going to type in Ngombo again. I'm going to do a different kind of search, and I'm going to click on images. And I'm just going to grab another image, so this one just here. So I'm going to do this in a different way. So instead of saving this off and then inserting it as a picture, I'm going to do a screen grab of it. So you need to make sure that whatever you want to screen grab is directly behind OneNote. So I've got this page open, and I'm going to maximize OneNote. And I'm going to click on screen clipping, which will allow OneNote to minimize, and then you'll see that we kind of get this ghosting feature over the top of our screen, and our cursor changes to a crosshair. And if I drag over the picture, like so, basically selecting what I want to cut out. And when I let go, it automatically inserts it into OneNote, and I can then resize that down. Now what you'll see is when you insert a picture, it actually comes in within a container which we can drag around. I sometimes find this container causes me problems when it comes to like lining things up. Sometimes it goes a bit haywire. The picture is actually inside the container. I don't know whether you can see that. When I click on the picture, I get the little dots around the outside. If I click on the border of the container, it looks slightly different. So they're two separate things, and I quite often, if you do find that you're having problems when it comes to dragging things around in its container, just drag the image, or it can be a bit tricky as you can see there. That's it. Drag the image outside of its container, and you'll find that you have a lot more luck when it comes to dragging things around. You might not find that problem. I find it occasionally that the formatting goes a little bit haywire if you're trying to overlap containers, so I like to drag the image outside. You'll see also, as we've got here, because this is a screen clipping, it comes across with the text screen clipping taken, and it gives you the date and time. So again, it's good for documentation purposes. If you want to know exactly when you took that screen clipping, you have that information there. If you find that information quite useless, like I don't need it, you can just go in and delete that. So I'm going to drag my little picture up, and I'm going to put it right next to my other picture. I'm just going to resize that down a little bit. And there we go. So we now have two pictures side by side. The same thing applies when you're copying and pasting text or information. Again, if I go onto the internet, and I'm just going to go back to Google, and I'm going to Google Ngombo again, and I'm going to go to the Lonely Planet website, one of my favorite websites, travel resources, if anybody is interested in that kind of thing. And they've got a whole section on Ngombo, and maybe I want to steal this. I'm going to take this by copying it, Control C, going back to OneNote. I'm going to click underneath my pictures, and then I can do a Control V to paste, or alternatively I can go to the home ribbon, click my paste button, and I have three options there, again, which you should be familiar with. I can choose to keep the source formatting, which is going to bring across that information and the formatting from the Lonely Planet website. I can choose to merge the formatting, which means it will convert the formatting into what I'm using currently on this page, or I can choose to keep the text only, which will basically remove all of the formatting and just give me plain text. So whichever one you choose, and I can then resize that to make it look nice and pretty. And one of the things that I like about this, particularly when I'm gathering information from lots of different sources, is that it comes across with a link back to where you got that information from. So you can see at the bottom it says from, and then we have a URL listed there. So if I want to jump back to that source, I can click on that and it will take me back to that page. So that's really useful as well when you're gathering information together. There are lots of other ways that you can gather text together. I'm not going to go through everything because we don't have time in this hour, but there are a few different ways. And again, if you go through our OneNote course, you'll see the full list of ways that you can pull information in. This is just a couple of examples that we have. Lovely. Now just to a couple of the other things which you might not be as familiar with, you have the options to record audio and record video. Now I really like these little options. I use record audio so much. So in my previous role I used to use OneNote all the time, and before I would train a training session I would sit in on another trainer's training session just so I could learn how that session was structured. And instead of desperately trying to write notes as she was going through to keep up with the information, I would use OneNote and I would record the audio. So as she was training the session, instead of me having to type notes, I could click on record audio and I could sit back with my coffee and I could watch the presentation, safe in the knowledge that I was capturing everything she was saying without having to hurriedly write notes because I was recording the audio. And you can do that very simply. I'm not going to do it now because we're going to get lots of feedback because there's lots of us on the call today, but if you click record audio, it basically will just start recording and you'll get a recording bar at the top and you can just click stop when you're done, which is a really, really nice feature. The same thing with record video. So this will turn on your camera, your webcam, and you can start recording video as well if you want to. I'm going to show you a nice little feature in relation to audio and video just by inserting some audio and video files that I already have created. So again, if you've got audio and video files, MP4s or movie files stored off locally or saved off somewhere, you can insert those into your notebook as well by clicking on the file attachment button. So very simple. And I'm going to go to, let's remember where we've got them saved. We've got them in OneNote, and I've got an MP3 file there called background music, and I also have a video file called Oxford Street. So it doesn't really relate to what we're doing, but I'm going to just show you this one as an example. So I'm going to use the video file and I'm going to click Insert. And I'm going to attach it as a file. And there is my little video file. Now if I double click, that's going to play my video file like so. So you can incorporate audio and video into your notebooks. Now one little feature that I really like, and this works if you're currently recording audio or if you're maybe listening to some audio files, as you type notes, so I could watch this presentation, so let's open it again, and I could be typing notes at the same time. And what I love about OneNote is when you, and I think it finished before I was typing that note, let me try it again. I might do it because it's a bit longer with the background file. Because what it will do, let's insert it again, so file attachments. I'm going to insert the other file just because it's a bit longer in length and it gives me a chance to type while it's still playing. So I'm going to insert the music file. Lovely. So you might hear some music in a moment. So I'm going to double click and I'm going to type some notes. It's very soothing, that music, isn't it? There we go. And you'll see as I'm playing, I get the playback bar at the top, which I can use to control that recording. So I'm just going to stop it. And you'll now see when I hover over the notes I was making, can you see the little icon to the left-hand side? There's a little circle with a little play button. Now, what that will do is when you click it, it will jump you to that point in the recording that you made that note. So if you can imagine, if you're listening to maybe our previous example, a training session, and you want to make your own notes as you're listening back to that training, you can very quickly jump to that specific part of the recording because it links through to when you made that note, which I really, really like that feature. I think it's really, really nice. Lovely. Now there's lots of other things that you can do. As I said, we're not going to have a chance to look at them all in the session today. I'm going to jump you very quickly across to the Draw tab and just show you some of the drawing tools. So you might be familiar with things like this, and these work particularly well, as I said, if you're using a tablet with a stylus. I am the world's worst person at writing with my mouse, as you're going to see in a moment. So I could select any of these pen tools. So for example, I'm going to select this one here. And it just allows you to mark things up, you know, draw arrows, do whatever you want. Again, it's got that scrapbook, notebooking quality to it. But a lovely little feature that you have, and this is where it all goes wrong because I cannot write with a mouse, but I'm going to try and write. I'm going to write the word love just to say that I love Ngombo. And if you were using a stylus pen, this would be a lot neater, but I'm doing my best with my mouse. There we go. A little bit wonky, but that'll do. It's not too. I'm getting a thumbs up from James, so it's not too bad. What you can do is if you're somebody who has a stylus pen and you like to write handwritten notes, which you can do very easily in OneNote. So the example I always use is if you're in a meeting, maybe you're handwriting notes on your tablet device, you can then go in and you can select your text, and we're going to use the lasso select tool here. And we're going to draw a little selection around this. And what you can then do, and this is a really nice little feature, is you can convert all of the handwritten notes into text using the ink to text feature in the convert group at the end here. And you can see it converts it directly to text. So you could write handwritten notes really quickly, and then if you need to convert it to typed text, you can do that simply by selecting it and ink to text. So a really nice little utility. Of course, you have other things on here, the eraser, so if you've done some marking up and then you want to erase things, you have various different sizes, so I could select large eraser and just remove all of my scribblings if I wanted to, just by rubbing over. We can draw shapes, we can do all different kinds of things in here, and we can also do things like, if we jump across to the View ribbon, we can do things like change the page color, so this might be something which you want to do. There's not a huge selection of colours, and I know that these are so pale you're probably barely going to be able to tell that I've changed the colour of the page because they really are pale. But if I go and select one of these colours, so let's do Blue Mist, that sounds mystical. I don't know if you can see that too well, but the background has actually changed. And also you might want to do something like add rule lines, and this always reminds me of being at school. So back in my day, and maybe this is probably not the same for Sydney, who's very young, sitting next to me, making me feel very, very old. I don't know, do they still have books with rule lines in at school? They do. She tells me that they do. They have. I just imagine they've gone futuristic and they're all on iPads now. But back in my day, we used to have our maths books used to be grids, and our English books used to be lines. They still are. That's good to know. Thank you. We can essentially recreate that and add in some rule lines. And you might think, why on earth would I want to do that? Again, it's so that if you are using a stylus pen, you can keep nicely in line. So again, it's just as if you were writing in a regular notebook. So you can add your rule lines in there as well. Great. So those are the basic features. There is a whole heap of functionality that I haven't even had a chance to show you, and we've got a couple of minutes left, and I just want to just show you a couple of the sharing options that you have, because again, this might be something which you want to do. So as I said, you can share right at the beginning, or now that we've got some information in our notebook, I might decide that I want to share my notebook with the people that I'm going to Sri Lanka with, those lucky people. So I'm going to go into File, and I have a whole bunch of share options from the menu. Now remember, in order to share, your notebook must be saved into a shared location, a network drive or OneNote. If I try and share a local notebook, and I'll just show you the difference, so if I go back and switch to, if you remember, we saved Project Tornado locally. If I try and do the same thing by going into File and Share, I get this message: to share this notebook, you'll need to put it in OneDrive or SharePoint. Okay, and then I have the option to move that notebook to somewhere else. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. So let's go back to Holidays. I'm going to go down to File. I'm going to select Share. Now you have a few different share options. The first one here, Share with People. This allows you to type in the names or the email addresses of the people that you want to share the notebook with. And I would recommend this method if you're sharing with a few people. So maybe there's just 2, 3, 4 people you want to share it with. This is the perfect method to use to share with a few people. I can type in their names in here, and then I can then choose whether I want them to be able to edit or only view that notebook. So I have a slight bit of control in there as well. I can type in a message, so whatever I type in here, when I click Share, it's going to send those people an email with a link to the notebook, which they can then open and either view or edit depending on the level of access that they have. That's the method I would use for small amounts of people. However, occasionally, maybe you've created something that needs to go out to lots of people, so maybe your entire department, so maybe there are 100 people in that department. It's going to get pretty tedious if you have to type in 100 names into here. So what you're going to want to do in that case for lots of people is get a sharing link instead. So again, depending on if you want them to be able to view or edit, you would select Create Link, and it will then give you a little link which you can then copy and paste into an Outlook email, and then you can select your distribution list, whoever it is that you want to send it to, and send the link out as opposed to actually inviting them to the document. So I would use this one for lots of people, the other one for a smaller group of people. There are some other options in here which we're not going to have time to go through because we're just about out of time and I don't want to keep you here longer than we need to be. Share with Meeting, Move Notebook. As I said, everything, all of the functionality of Notebook is covered in our OneNote course. So if this has kind of piqued your interest and you want to really kind of dive in and see some of those features, we didn't even have time to cover things like search and tagging and Outlook tasks. And there is so much to OneNote. I would definitely recommend that you have a little look through that course because it is a good course if I do say so myself, because you know I did write it, so I probably a little bit biased there, but I would recommend that you do check that out if you want to know a little bit more. We've just come up to 5:30 here, which is the end of the webinar. So I'm just going to take a couple of questions if anybody has any.
Unmuted.
Got a few. So can you revoke access?
Great question. Yes, you can. Can I just ask you to mute for 1 second? Thank you very much. Yes, you can. I can still hear you. Oh, sorry. I'm getting a real echo, and it's normally when we haven't muted our mics. Yes, thank you for that question, whoever asked that. So yes, you can revoke access. So once you share it, so let's go back to File and Share. Now, I haven't actually shared it with anyone. Let me share it with my other account. Oh dear, it seems to have hung a little bit. Just bear with me, technical issues. Okay, let's go back to File and Share. Let's hope it doesn't do the same thing this time. So if I try and share that with myself, oh, please don't hang on me again. There we go. Right. So I'm going to just share that very quickly with myself, which is going to create an email and send to me. And you can see now that even though they're both me, they're different accounts, but you can see now I have who I've shared it with listed down here. So I can then go in if I wanted to, and I can change the permissions. So if I've given them edit access, I can switch them to view. Or if I want to revoke access completely, I can remove the user. Now, if you've sent out a sharing link, you can you can disable the link. So if you want to take access away for everybody, you would disable the link. But again, if you just want to remove it for one person, you can right-click and you can remove user from there. Does that answer your question, whoever asked that? Yep, perfect.
I'm going to do the questions because we need to kind of run through this because yeah, we're under a little bit of time pressure, and I know that some people here may. We've got a few questions, so we're going to try and get through them as quickly as possible. Okay. So Mr. Ray has a few questions specifically. He said, when we do the spreadsheet in Excel, where is the file source for that? Where would the file be created? So, yeah.
For the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it will be created.
Yeah.
There we go. That's better. Sorry, I was on mute. Yes. So when you create the spreadsheet, so for example, this one, if we double-click, it will normally be saved in the location wherever the notebook is stored. So if you selected OneDrive at the beginning, whichever folder you selected, that is where all of it will be stored.
All right. The next question Mr. Ray has is, does the file print out? I'm not entirely sure what that means actually. Does the file print out or spreadsheet change the memory or speed rather than a link? I'm not sure if you know what that means.
I'm not 100% sure what that question means. The file printout changes the memory. I'm not sure. If you're referring to how much memory does it take up, or is it quite slow, or does it increase the file size at all of the notebook, then it will increase the file size as much as any picture or screenshot or anything would. I'm sorry, I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that question.
Yeah, Mr. Ray, if that isn't what you meant, if you could just clarify it by maybe writing in quickly, but we're going to end in a moment. But Nancy also asked, can you please tell us how to move a page from one section in the notebook to another section or another notebook?
Yep, absolutely. Great question. Was that from Nancy, did you say? Yes, lovely. Hi, Nancy. Great question. So yes, you can move your pages around however you like. So for example, if I wanted to move, so I'm in the January section at the moment and I'm on the Colombo page, so I could move this to February, March, April, wherever I wanted to move it to. So if you right-click, remember right-click is always your friend, you have move or copy in there. So I can select move or copy. And it then opens up all of my notebooks. So I have my holidays notebook open. It's showing me my sections. So if I want to move Colombo to the February area, I can then select February, and then I can choose if I want to move it or if I want to copy it. So I could choose move. And now when I click on February, the Colombo page is in there. Okay, and you can do the same with things like sections. If you right-click on your sections, you have move or copy, so you can move your sections around in much the same way. So if I want to move the February section to this section group, I just select it from there and move or copy. So really, really simple. Right-click menu is your friend, move or copy.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's a great answer, and Nancy has actually said that also. Any more questions? Do the shared people need to have OneNote? I would assume that the answer is yes.
Another great question. You're coming up with some really good questions today, guys. Yeah, so the question was, for those that didn't hear that, so when you share, does the person who you're sharing with have to have OneNote? If you want them to be able to edit, then yes, it will open in OneNote. However, if they don't have OneNote, it will open in a web browser.
So yeah, my assumption was wrong. We know what assuming did to me. So yeah, I think that we'll leave it there. Any more questions? If you'd like to send them to myself at info@webinarsteam.com. That's info@webinarsteam.com, which is spelled how you would probably imagine, info at webinarsteam.com. And then I can answer or forward any questions to Deb myself. Also, for anybody who wants the recording, we will be sending that out as soon as the uploading is complete, as soon as we've got the upload onto the site. So there's no need to worry about that. It'll be between 24 and 48 hours that we aim to get it up by. So just keep an eye on your email. And we have another webinar, of course, at the same time next week, which I hope to see everybody there. Mr. Ray is just typing some full stops. Mr. Ray, for any of the questions that we haven't answered here, I'll make sure that we get answers to you after the webinar. But thank you very much to everybody. We are going to have to call it an afternoon there. So thanks a lot, and I hope you have a great week. And thank you so much to Deb as well, because that was fantastic.
No problem. Thank you. Lovely to speak to you all, and I hope you have a great rest of day.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody, and enjoy your week. Bye-bye.